Good evening. See if I can come into focus. I don't know if you can hear me, but it's raining like crazy outside, so I hope that the sound is still working okay. It's so warm in here that I left the window open, so tell me if there's any problems with the sound, and I'll have to close the window and turn on the air conditioner instead. But it's quite nice to have just an evening breeze instead of having the air conditioner on. I never felt as comfortable with that. I hope everyone's had a good weekend. It's Monday. I always have to think it is Monday. Yes, it is Monday today. So today is a guided meditation, which is always fun. Let's see. I always had thoughts about things like, oh, that would be nice to bring up, and then I forget about it. I come up with stuff during the day that would be nice to bring up, but we'll just see where it goes today. Hi, Catherine. My weekend was actually very nice, except for one thing. I was mowing the lawn and I ran into a big stone like the size of my fist, and it got thrown out of the lawnmower in the back, and I had it open because the grass was a bit wet, and then it hit my foot. So I actually I can barely walk. I hope it's not a fracture. I don't think it is, because then I probably couldn't have walked at all. But it's just I can't lift a shoe like when I have it on me. Except for that, it's been a really nice week, and it's been like being on vacation. We had such a nice time yesterday. Actually, it was the day before, maybe, when it was just summer weather in September, and we were sitting in the sandbox with me and the kids, and my daughter. She has this. She likes being the boss, but she also likes making games up in her mind, and it's so fun to see someone can get so much joy from just playing. And so she wanted to create a beach in our sandbox, and she had all these thoughts and ideas of how it had to be, and then she got angry when her little brother ruined it. And then we talked about, like, well, actually, you know what, the whole thing that we're trying to do is not to create a beautiful beach. We're actually trying to have fun and enjoy playing together. And then she really like, oh yeah, that's true. And we had such a nice time, and it felt just like being on the beach. There was no difference for me, except for that you would have the water and other stuff there, but except for that, it really felt like being on the beach. And it's fun to see how kids can really enjoy. It doesn't matter for them. I always said that our kids, they don't care if we go to the supermarket and look at the Christmas decorations, or if we go to a big Christmas fair. For them, it's the same. It's just they like seeing things, and they love doing things together. So being with kids really helps you not want to go away from here, but actually just enjoy being here and just doing whatever it is that you're doing. And like I said, I could feel them. For them, it was the same as if we would have been on the beach. We were sitting in our backyard. We didn't have the beach. We hadn't gone away, and it was warm. But it was, kind of like being on the beach, which was very nice. In a way, I think that's what we're aiming for, is to just enjoy. Good evening, Christian. Just enjoy being, like not needing to go somewhere else or changing something to enjoy being you. I mean, we have that idea, like, oh, we were sitting here, and I could see how I could have easily said, oh, you know what, I wish we were on the beach. We should have gone to the beach. It would have been so nice. It was 27 degrees. We should have gone to the beach. But for them, that wouldn't really have made that much of a difference. They loved going to the beach, but they also loved being here. What they really enjoyed was the interaction with us as parents, and especially me, since my fiance was away working for a while. So kids are very sensitive to being here and doing something that is anchored in being here, and not watching your phone or wanting to make it different. When they get older, they do that also, but I think they learn a lot of that behavior from us, rather than having them actually wanting or needing things to be that way. What about you? How has your weekend been, Catherine and Christian, the ones I can see now? Actually, now I remembered something. waiting for a response. But I had a really interesting question. I don't know if I have time to bring that up. It worked. It was short. Oh, I worked. It was short. That's good, I guess. I don't know. As long as it was fun at work, that's a good thing. I had one thing that I wanted to bring up because it was actually a question to one of my videos. If you've seen my videos, you've probably seen the one where I explain why I left and became a Buddhist monk for 6 years. Or did I say 8 years? Well, I was a monk for 6 years, but I was away for 8 years. So there was a guy who answered that with a question. And I actually did write an answer, but that answer disappeared when I had written it for some reason. I'm not sure why. It's been good, even though it was almost tropical heat. Yes, yeah, you're in Sweden as well. It's crazy, right? So he asked a question, and I was a bit confounded at first by the wording of the question, and I wanted to bring it up because it highlights a point that can be important for us when we discuss these things, and on how to progress your practice, because I think it's a common misconception. So basically he watched the video why I became a Buddhist monk, and this was his question. He asked like this: I am aware that this comment will very likely be received as overly critical, but I hope you try and sit with it. What do the rest of us that were not totally lost in narcissistic capitalism and materialism do to find greater peace? If the task isn't to develop enough insight to no longer be radically selfish, many of us are there already. What's the next step? And what I wrote to that was, would you elaborate a bit in your question? The answer depends on what you want to do. Do you want to become a better Buddhist or similar follower of some other religion? Or, well, that's what I meant at least. Or are you experiencing some kind of suffering that you want to overcome, or maybe something else? And let's see, his answer, further question then was, I'll do my best. I have found this narrative you describe in your own life, the dominant one in the modern pathway to meditation-based spirituality. It seems that for some, this expansion beyond self-absorption is very profound, yet most of us in the world weren't born nor cultivated enough privilege to develop the problem that your spiritual path helped you resolve. My question would then be, for the rest of us who don't need to fall off our golden throne, what insights can support our journey towards abiding in inner peace? Now, I want you to listen to the wording of that question and how it's put forth. And my answer, basically what I said, was that at first I didn't quite understand what he was saying, because he was asking for something else, as even though he had no suffering or no distortions, which was why I didn't quite understand what he was saying. And the thing that is easy to misunderstand, especially if you look at Buddhism, the way it's being taught in, well, certain traditions more than others, it's basically like the thing you're trying to do is become unselfish. And if you're unselfish, then you don't suffer. That's kind of how a big part of Buddhism is presented. So just become less selfish and then you won't suffer. And that is simply not true. There is truth to it, meaning that if you are less selfish and you were very greedy and held on to everything at first, that could be good practice to let go of that. But what you'll start doing if you really become unselfish is that you believe that this is somehow you're expecting some kind of reward from that. I'm going to be so unselfish, I'm going to give all of this away. And you also believe that if the bad part is the selfishness, meaning that I do things for myself, so I should just do for others. And if you have a feeling that capitalism is narcissistic or just bad, and if you believe that other people sit on a golden throne, then that means you have some kind of aversion towards that. When at least to me, words are difficult. It can be that it's not his native language, and that's just how he's read about it. So it's not actually what he means. But if I would have said those things, then there would have been some kind of aversion there, meaning towards that thing. So it's not that you need to become less selfish. Because if you have a problem with people who are selfish and who are narcissistic, and you have aversion towards those, then you also have a problem. I'm not saying it's good to be narcissistic or put yourself on a golden throne, but a lot of people also put themselves on a golden throne because they believe, oh, I'm so unselfish, I have no self, I don't do anything for myself, so I don't have any of these issues. But there's a very strong self in there who's trying to project the image of I'm not doing it for me. An example that I can come up with is a nun who was at one of the centers I went to, and she was walking like this. She was very humble. She was always like this, and she didn't take up any space. Oh yes, but always like this, very like yes, I'm nobody. I'm so humble. I don't end it smiling like that. And I always looked at her like, wow, she's making such a big deal of trying to be unselfish, and that's the same as someone who's doing the other way around. It's not good or bad like these things, or right or wrong really. It's craving or aversion. It's pushing or pulling. They're both equally bad from the perspective of letting go of the sense of self. And by letting go of the sense of self, meaning that you then experience reality as it is with less distortions, less suffering. And when you do that, it's quite naturally to be gentle, to do no harm. That's just what comes out of that. But it's very different when you try to forcibly do that because you think that's the right thing to do. So the answer in short is that it's easy to believe that you have kind of followed the path of Buddhism or these things, and then you don't have any problems. But if you believe that you need to help everyone to be happy and enjoy being alive, then that's equally difficult as I can only be happy when I have a Ferrari and not a house, but 10 houses, or like a big boat or a private jet. It doesn't really matter. You still hinge your enjoyment of being here, of being alive, upon something else that's going to happen in the future, or in like somehow. Do you see what I'm saying? And it's very easy to be caught up in this kind of thinking because it makes sense. And people will say that it's selfish, like, well, I shouldn't do things to enjoy myself. How can I enjoy when other people are feeling bad? But I mean, there is nothing that I can come up with that helps other people as much as you enjoying being alive and being there. Because if you feel good about you and about being where you are, when you come up and talk to someone who's feeling bad, that kind of wears off. Unless they're really resisting and refuse to feel good and just angry, and they're not in a place where they can let go of that, then that will probably just irritate them. But in general, there is nothing nicer than talking to a person who's generally in a good mood. And like I said, when you're in a good mood, then quite naturally you become gentle and you don't want to do any harm. I don't talk so much about the other part, which is being gentle and doing no harm, because the problem when I say that is that people then latch onto that and think that, oh yes, I need to just do like so much. I'm gonna, like the Sikh would be people who, a tradition who in my opinion takes it a bit too far. But I mean, if you believe in karma and you believe that every living being creates karma for you, then it makes sense. But I don't believe that. But if you would, then that makes sense. So they basically say that when they walk, they sweep the floor in front of them to make sure they don't kill any bacteria. The really I'm not going to say true believers, but hardcore practitioners, they don't turn on light switch because that kills germs and bacteria every time you do it. So that's taking it very far, and getting into religion of what's going to happen in the future because of your karma. And I don't think that's really beneficial to enjoying being here and spreading joy on the world. I think it's more like just try not to do harm and just be gentle. That when you see someone doing something idiotic, instead of going at them and telling them they're idiots and like being angry, just try to be gentle and look at yourself, your reaction. Doesn't mean it's okay what they're doing. Doesn't mean you're going to allow them to do it. It just means that you look at yourself and your reaction and you try to let go of that distortion. And if you do that first, usually most encounters works out much better than you come in with like, ooh, I want to defend myself and I want to push them down and be angry with them. You can still, like I said, you can still, it's not about what you do, it's about how you feel about what you do. So you can tell someone to stop doing something that you don't agree with, but you don't need to do it with anger or with fear or jealousy or whatever. Does that make sense? I thought it was an interesting topic, and it's something that I just have never had anyone ask me the question like that. They've asked in other ways, but no, actually, maybe not like that. I think this is the first time anyone's believed that they were actually done because they were, seeing themselves as not materialistic. But yeah, I hope that gave you some thoughts. that are beneficial. Yes, makes sense. Cool. So I dragged on a bit with that, but Mondays, guided meditations. For those of you who knew what we do, we start with a method we call the 5-4-3-2-1 method, where we notice 5 things around us that we can see, then 4 things that we can touch and feel, 3 things that we can hear, 2 things that we can smell, and finally 1 thing that we can taste. And the whole idea here is that we're trying to do those things without this distortion, this pushing and pulling. We're trying to just experience them through our senses without having a reaction towards it. We're just trying to see it as it is. There's a saying in Buddhism which is, in the seeing is only the seen, in the hearing is only the heard, meaning there's no emotional connection or interpretation of what you're seeing and hearing. You're just hearing without it reflecting on a self that is reacting towards that. And we do it together. We try to say it out aloud. If possible, if you can't, then you can say to yourself, that's fine as well. After that, we sit for 20 minutes, and today we have, I'll be guiding you. And you can follow it if you want to, or just do your own thing. And then after that, we have questions and answers, if there are any. So, you can say with me, I have 5 things that I can see. And I can see grease. I can see silver-colored gadget. I can see some orange lights. I can see a painted fig. And I can see wrinkles on a silvery fabric. And when we're doing this, take your time to really look at these things, to really feel these things and experience them. It's not about doing it quickly, not even about doing it correctly. Just do your best to really feel, see, hear, touch, and taste, and smell. So 4 things that we can feel. I can feel the cold air blowing on my chins. I mean my, what do you call that part of the leg? My upper leg. I can feel my hand touching my other leg. I can feel the textured textile on this pillow. And I can feel, oh, I thought there was rubber. This is some kind of nylon something on the microphone. And then we do 3 things that we can hear. And it's good to take your time and listen. Maybe not take always the first obvious sound, but really look and see what kind of sounds you can hear. I can hear water dropping on something that sounds like a hollow object. I can hear water running in the rain gutters. I can hear water from the tires of cars passing by. And then we do 2 things that we can smell. I can smell rain, summer rain. can smell wet metal. And I can, finally we take one thing we can taste. I can taste bad breath. So for this meditation, we'll be focusing on our breath. But we're not trying to go into really deep concentration states where we're focusing on one tiny, tiny spot of our breath and trying to forget about reality around us. Instead, we're trying to be aware of breath happening, almost as a field. And the reason we're doing this is to gain awareness of what's happening inside of us, so that we can then throughout the day feel, how am I doing now? What am I feeling right now? Is there any distortion or anything happening inside of me as I'm walking through life, experiencing advertisements, conversations, YouTube videos, sounds, smells, confrontations, whatever it is that happens throughout your day? The first step is simply to be aware of those distortions, the pressure, the friction that you have towards the world outside or inside of you. And to help us do that, we use our breath as an anchor to make sure that we have something that we're familiar with, that we recognize, that is always there, that can help us to stay aware. This is also not what's commonly referred to as breath work, where we try to control our breath and try to make it do certain things to raise our energy or to make us more energized. Instead, what we're trying to do is let breath happen by itself, as we simply step aside, as we simply stand to the side and observe breath happening inside of us. And to make it easier to do this, we're going to do a technique where we count our breaths from 1 to 8 and then down again from 8 to 1. And we'll also be doing that in a particular way. When we put the count, we breathe in and out. 1. So we do the breath and then we put the actual number in the pause that naturally comes when you're relaxed and you're breathing. Unless your body is in stress, because then the breath will be continuous. But if you're relaxed and sitting down or lying down or standing up, you'll notice that your breath goes in, makes a little whoopsie in the top as it pauses, and then goes down, and there it stops when all your breath is emptied out. There's a pause until it starts up again and breathes in. And in that pause, what I noticed when I was sitting in the meditation centers all those hours was that my mind kept drifting in and pulling me away in those pauses, because then there was nothing actively happening with my breath. So it was more difficult to stay aware, and instead my mind just flew away. So I'll count together with you once from 1 to 8 and then down from 8 to 1. And then you can do it yourself until I join in and give you some pointers throughout the meditation of things you can focus on. So, breathing in and breathing out. One, breathing in and breathing out. Two, breathing in and breathing out. 3, breathing in and breathing out. 4, breathing in and breathing out. 5, breathing in and breathing out. 6, breathing in and breathing out. 7, breathing in and breathing out. 8, breathing in and breathing out. 7, breathing in and breathing out. 6, breathing in and breathing out. 5, breathing in and breathing out. 4, breathing in and breathing out. 3, breathing in and breathing out. 2, breathing in and breathing out. 1. Now continue counting yourself from 1 to 8, then down again from 8 to 1 as you breathe in and breathe out. 1, breathing in and breathing out. I want you to keep on focusing on your breath and observing as it goes in and out and in and out. But for a short while, I want you to stop counting. And instead, I'll ask you to ask yourself a question at the same time as you're observing your breath. I'll ask you a question, and I want you to look for the answer. Not in actual words or even trying to find it, but just stop and look for whatever comes up. And when you've done that, you can go back to counting your breath again. But for now, stop counting and ask yourself, really truly ask and look as you ask yourself, what is my next thought? What is the next thought that you have? And wait and look. one of the main parts of the way that I practice and that I teach others to practice is to be aware of how you're feeling, how you're doing right in this moment. And it's not a meditation exercise that you do every now and then, as we're doing now when we're sitting down and focusing on our breath. Instead, this is something that we try to work up the awareness. You can keep it with you throughout the day. And when you do a lot of meditation, this comes quite naturally because you become accustomed to, you become used to experiencing and feeling what's happening inside of you. And you will feel that when you walk by certain places, you'll feel that you want to go in or be close to that place. I remember when I was holding an iPhone, or it was an iPod, how I felt this strong distortion, as if though I want to have this, because the way it had been designed, the way it felt in your hand, just made me want to have it. And for most people, they would hold that in their hand and think, oh, I need this. But when you see that that need, that desire is actually hurting you, then very likely you'll shift around to seeing that it will be an ever-endless stream of trying to get things to find that feeling of fulfillment or peacefulness that you're actually after. So as you're meditating now and keeping your awareness on the breath as it's happening, I want you to ask yourself, how am I doing right now? How are you feeling? And if the answer to that question is anything other than, I'm in a good mood, I feel well, then ask yourself, why? Why are you not feeling good right now? Why are you not enjoying being you, sitting here in this moment? And usually when you walk back in time, you'll find that, well, a little bit earlier before I sat down, I watched a video of this political person that I really dislike, and I still feel that distortion, that aversion, that anger towards them. And if you look at that and ask yourself and really feel the pain, the suffering, the literal suffering that you're feeling because of something that you watched, not now, but in the past, it seems kind of silly, kind of dumb to keep yourself from enjoying this moment of being here because of something that happened then. So ask yourself, is it okay if I just enjoy being here? If I just allow myself to be in a good mood? And as you do this, you'll see that it's not as easy as it might first seem. But I want you to keep this with you as you go out through the day, and keep asking yourself over and over, how am I feeling? How am I experiencing being alive? And if you're not enjoying, if you're not in a good mood, then ask yourself why, and see if that's something that you think is a good cause for sacrificing your enjoyment of this moment, your presence with your children, your presence with your partner, with the person you're with, because you are caught up in something that isn't even happening now to you. As usual, you're free to keep on sitting or drink a cup of tea with me, or if you have any questions or thoughts you'd like to share, you're welcome to do so. Did anyone notice anything when you asked yourself, what is my next thought? Catherine is asking, is that... Yes, this rain you hear in my room. I have the window open. It's actually very soothing. It feels like one of those background ambience CDs they have playing. But it's actually real. As I was asking when you were sitting and you asked yourself, what is my next thought? How did that appear? What happened for you? If something happened, it doesn't need to be, but what happens many times is that when you ask yourself the question, what is my next thought? And it's something you can do, it's kind of a trick. It's not something that really works continuously throughout the day. At least I haven't met anyone who's been able to make it work continuously throughout the day. Yes, I'm sleepy as well, Christian. When you ask yourself, what is my next thought? What tends to happen is that you go backwards like this and you widen your awareness and you wait. And as you wait, you stop your thoughts temporarily. You stop the distortion towards the world around you for a few seconds. And sometimes it even kicks you out of the stream you're in and you just wait, just stops. I tried this a lot. See, Lubov Kalinina. I'm sorry if I pronounced that wrong. Welcome, by the way. Yes, it's not easy to allow myself to feel good. It seems like something terrible happens if I do. Ooh, this is such a good topic. I'll continue and I'll go back to that because that is a really good thing. What happens is you bring yourself back and you widen your awareness. Just as I'm saying, don't focus on one point, but instead be aware of all of you. And that is the kind of awareness you have when you're not distorting. It's a wide awareness. When you contract, when you focus on something small, you make me and the thing I'm observing. Whereas when you focus on something wide, you dilute this feeling of self, this sensation of self. So by asking this question, it can help you kind of get into that. But again, it's not something you can really, because for some people it's an incredible experience, and for some nothing really happens. But you can bring that with you when you go out through the day and see how you can use your awareness in different ways, and it will make your thoughts more in the background, kind of. They're not so solid as they would feel otherwise. And you also notice that when you start visualizing, trying to go into thoughts, well, that actually makes you narrow down and create self. So I am quite firmly against visualizations from the perspective of trying to let go of the sense of self, because by doing so, you're bringing yourself away from here, your senses, and you're closing in and trying to see something that isn't really there. I'll take this question that Lubov I hope I pronounced that correctly. It's not actually a question, it's a statement, and it's a very good statement because it's what a lot of people run into. So, yes, it's not easy to allow myself to feel good. It seems like something terrible happens if I do so. This is so true. I have a theory. I try to only talk about things that we experience, but I'll bring a little theory in. This distortion that we have towards things around us, I believe it's evolution. I think it's made to keep us alive. And the perfect example would be a cat. Cats are masters of letting go of distortion when they don't need it. A cat, if you ever have seen one who is healthy and happy, he'll walk around, or she will walk around, and they'll just be completely at ease. They don't give a about anyone else. They're the masters of the universe, and they're just walking down the street like they're the shit, like they're the only person, I almost said the only thing alive that matters. And they'll walk around, and then they hear a sound, and they go, have distortion, and they're waiting, is something going to happen? And then they let go of it, and then just become this like smooth thing moving around. Now, I remember seeing a kitten when I was in Kuala Lumpur before I was ordained. And I remember seeing it on the sidewalk, and seeing abandoned animals is something you have to get used to when we're traveling in Asia, because it's quite difficult for Westerners. We're not used to seeing that. But there was a super cute little kitten, and I saw it when it's just a baby. And it was so sweet. And I wish I could take you with me, but I can't. And he was meowing at everyone and just looking and wanting to have food, attention, peace, calm, protection. And I came back 2 weeks later, and the same kitten was there, but he was bloodied, and he had like nose bites off. His fur was dirty, and he looked like he'd been kicked and beaten, and it was just so thin, almost no meat on his bones. And from being soft and trying to get attention, he was, as soon as he walked near me, he was like this, really afraid of everything. So his distortion system was on alert, because he was threatened where he was. So when you say that it's difficult to allow myself to feel good, it's because we've worked this sense of self up so much that we're like, I can't allow myself to feel good. What would happen if I did? That would, like, imagine all the bad things that could happen to me if I didn't feel bad, if I didn't worry about something bad going to happen. And then you have practically all of marketing trying to mess you up. Marketing, I studied marketing, and one of the things they try to do is they try to make you feel just a little bit uncomfortable. Not too bad, because then you'll sweat off and you don't like the advertisement, but you want to create a sense of discomfort. And then when you feel that discomfort, and the person is viewing the ad, then you present a solution. If you buy the solution, then your discomfort is going to go away. So we are constantly being bombarded by advertisement and people wanting us to get a little bit uncomfortable, a little bit distortion, so that we'll buy a product or do whatever they want us to do. Social media, I mean Facebook and Twitter and TikTok, oh my goodness, that's just like it's so bad, it's terrible. That's kind of designed to make you feel like shit, so that you do what they want you to do. So it's difficult to go against this, and there's this belief that I have to, and maybe there's even some people who have a belief that I would be selfish if I allowed myself to feel good and enjoy being alive. But if you think about it, like I said before, there's nothing that is so peaceful towards other people as a person who's enjoying being alive and who's just in a good mood. Imagine being in a good mood and then going up and kicking someone in the face, or starting to shout profanities at them, or going online and typing that people should fall on scissors and die of cancer. Like, you wouldn't do that because you're in a good mood. And then quite naturally the other part, which is be kind, just be gentle. Maybe not even be kind, but be gentle. Because kindness can be interpreted, like what is kind is difficult, but be gentle in your actions. And the Hippocratic law, the first do no harm, so do no harm to others, meaning that just don't hurt other people or other beings unless you need to. meaning that when you drive your car, you're going to hurt flies. Otherwise, you'll just have to sit still the whole time. So I feel you, Liebov, and you have a very good point. And there's a good reason for that as well. We're working against something that's been deeply ingrained in us and that has been set on edge by society as we live it today. I believe one of the reasons that it was easier in one way to feel good before, it was more difficult to live a life where we didn't have to chase after food and safety, but it was easier to enjoy being alive because you didn't have all the things that we've created for us, the criteria to feel happy. In the olden days, like my daughter says, if you went out, you had food, it was a good day, you had shelter and you were safe, you were happy. Today, if you're safe, you have a house, you have a car, you have 2 cars, you have a wife, maybe you have 2 wives, and you have everything you need, and yet you can't be happy because I don't have the clock that I want, I don't have the new telephone that I want, I don't have the job that I want. We make it so difficult to enjoy being alive and being just happy with being us. Christian, I think I felt my body really clearly when I was waiting for that thought. Yeah, that's the distortion or the sense of self is actually feeling, and when you let go, it's kind of like you just feel it's you can feel yourself expanding, like this. If you were contracted before, then you just let go, and there's just ease in breathing. There's like a lightness to it that is very tasty, very enjoyable to experience. Hey JVB, nice to have you here. So I hope that I wanted to bring in some other elements. Like I said, I'm experimenting with what we can do in these open guided meditations, because they are quite different from when I work with either a group continuously every week or one-on-one, because then we can more steer and we can give tasks and things to do. But if you want to have something that can really help you with being able to feel good, it is to throughout the day keep on asking yourself, how am I doing? How am I experiencing this world around me, this sense of self right now? And if you're not in a good mood, then see why, and see if you could actually let go of that. And what's going to happen is that the self is going to go and say, no, I couldn't allow myself to feel good now. Don't you know what they did? Don't you know what they said? Don't you know what they've done to me? The terrible things they took from me, and they wouldn't take terrible things. The terrible things they did when they took from whatever it is you're feeling. And I'm not belittling your suffering. I'm not belittling and saying that it's not true. What I'm saying is that what they did and your reaction, there's not an absolute connection in between those two. We've just been brought up to believe that that's how it is. When you win the competition, then you're happy. Yeah, but for how long? You're happy until you want to win the next one. You're happy for like just a short while, and then you just move on to the next one. So happiness and how we allow ourselves to enjoy just being here is something that you can do all the time. And it happens all the time, even in extreme circumstances. But for sure, there are circumstances that make this a lot harder and difficult. But it can also be the kind of thing that kicks you out of your suffering. A good example is if you've ever read, I mean, I'm sure everyone has read Eckhart Tolle, and how he was sitting I think he was sitting on a park bench. And he was feeling such extreme suffering that he couldn't just live with himself, he said. Now, for me, the wording, what he said, that the thoughts, that's just something happened and then he put words to it, is my interpretation of what happens. But actually what happened was that the system was so in this distortion, and when you look at it, eventually you go like, hey, wait a minute. Well, this sucks. I'm just going to stop doing that. This sense of self just kicks out of whatever it's doing. And then it can just drop, even though you're in a terrible situation or feeling extreme suffering. That can happen sometimes. So it is possible. It's just more or less difficult at different circumstances. I think I said hi to you as well, JVB. Nice to have you here as always. Well, it's 9 o'clock. Did anyone have anything else that kind of came up? I did a bit of a monologue today. Tulibar, Danish? I know, Tulibar, I recognize that. The self does not create thoughts, the thoughts create the self. The self does not create thoughts, the thoughts create the self. I would say that it's not actually the svensk. Hey, I would say that it's actually not the thoughts that create the self. It's the distortion towards those thoughts that are part of creating the self. And this is a common misconception. We get so caught up about thoughts and believing that thoughts are the most important thing. But even if you don't have thoughts, you're still going to have a sense of self. Even if there are people who don't have thoughts, who can't think thoughts, and they still suffer. So it's actually a sensation. I talked, I don't know if it was the last sitting or if it was the last client I spoke with, but basically the way the self works is that you have a connection towards this. I have a connection towards this sofa. So I know where it came from. I know that it's wool. I know that it's this color, and I've seen different things that are in this color. And then I create a feeling of, okay, this is safe. It's not going to attack me. It's not going to burst on fire all of a sudden. It's not dangerous. It's safe. So that gives me a feeling. And what happens is that you have a pressure. This is a soft pressure, so it feels nice, but it's still a pressure. And then I have a pressure towards this microphone. I have a pressure towards this light, a distortion towards this computer in front of me, and everything I know a computer can do, and everything you're writing is creating a distortion. The sound is creating a distortion, a pressure towards that. It can be comfortable or uncomfortable, but it's still a pressure. And all these things together, they create a sense of point that it's kind of coming into. Yes, I made a video about that. That's my last video I made. I just remember now. If you look at my last video, I talk about this. So all these things together create this sense of me, that there's something here. So it's not a thought. It's actually a pressure that you create. And even if you let go of your thoughts, which is why I believe that people who practice non-duality, they kind of jump to the conclusion that I don't have a sense of self, because they don't feel a strong sense of self, which is something that happens when you meditate, or you can do inquiry as well, but there is still a self there. They just kind of believe that, I don't have any concepts, so I don't experience self, which is, in my view, a big misconception. So thoughts, yes, sure, it feels like they create self, but it's actually the distortion towards the thought that is creating the self. JVB, do you believe in the concept of letting go? Letting go is popularly mentioned when recommending people to move past unpleasant emotion or unpleasant experience. So letting go, what would that mean? That means you're not distorting. That means you're letting go of the resistance. But the problem is when we start saying letting go, people involve the self and they say, I can't let go of that because they did this to me. Don't you know what they did? They did this terrible thing. I cannot let go of that. And then you create an idea that it's you, and it's like they've done this to you, and you still have this concept here. But if you take away all of that and you just look at the distortion, then there's less of a you in there. It's just, hey, wait a minute, this sucks. This hurts. This pressure that I'm creating towards what they did, this hurts. And I can let go of that. But that doesn't mean that I'm going to let them continue doing what they're doing. Or that I won't see that in the future, because I still understand what happened and I don't agree with that. And this kind of solves the whole problem when people say letting go or forgive people. They're like, does that mean that I'm going to let them do it? No. If you just look at it from the perspective of distortion or pressure that you're creating towards these things, and you're the one suffering from this pressure, you can let go of that. But that doesn't mean that you're saying what they did or what happened to you is okay. Or that you let yourself be in that situation again. Because next time hey, you know what? I don't like what they did, so I simply won't let that happen again. Whereas if you try to forgive them, then people come up with thoughts like, I'm going to forgive them and it's okay what they did. They had something terrible happen to them before, so they're doing this because of something someone did to them, or it's past life, and you start involving past lifetimes that you don't know, or you just make up all these stories. You're just complicating. It's just distortion. They did something that sucked and it hurts you. You can feel that distortion. You can let go of that, and then you can see clearly, because then you don't have you being angry. You can say, hey, wait a minute, what they did, actually, it kind of made sense because maybe they felt threatened by me. But then you're doing it because you don't push against it, and you can see clearly without yourself having all this anger or hurt in it, which is very different from trying to convince yourself, oh no, they're doing this because they had something bad. You see, we're coming at it in different ends, kind of. What if they won't stop? What if who won't stop? You mean if someone's doing something bad to you and then they won't stop? Same thing. Just let go of the distortion and then take a decision from a point. My son today, when we came home, he was not happy because he wanted something that we didn't allow him to have. And he screamed. He's 2 years old and he can scream so it hurts your ears. Like just talking, just taking a big breath and just screaming at the top of his lungs so it hurts me, his mother and his sister. And I could see how there's anger coming in. My daughter went like, stop screaming. She was like this. And I could see that anger coming up. But I always try to look at how do I feel about this thing happening on the outside. And I try to more focus on how I'm distorting towards it than change the thing. And when I can make sure that I have as little distortion as I'm able to have towards it, then I take an action. Because then I'm like, okay, I've let go of this. And then I can ask him, okay, can you stop? What is it you want? Why are you screaming? We can't do this. And can you talk calmly? Can you explain it to me? And if that still doesn't work, then I tell him, look, we're eating. You go sit over there and you can scream there. If it still screams, well, you can go sit in the bathroom and you can scream there, or upstairs or somewhere else because it's hurting my ears. But I'm not saying it through anger. And from his perspective, I'm hoping that he feels that he's not rejected, that he's not loved, that he feels that he is still loved, but I'm simply telling him what he can and can't do because it hurts the rest of us. So it's not that you can't take action to get out of something, it's that you let go of this distortion in yourself and then you take a conscious choice of what you believe is the best thing to do. Catherine, I had to distance myself from friends who would not stop hurting me. That's exactly what you should do. Distance yourself from people who hurt you. And then look at how you're distorting towards that and see if you're feeling hurt, if you're feeling guilt, if you're creating a lot of pressure, and then see how that is hurting you. It's not hurting them. Well, we tend to believe many times, I did this so much when I was younger, oh my goodness, I'm going to show them. I'm going to show them how miserable I am and how bad they made my life so they can suffer, so they'll know. But I'm just hurting myself. And then when you can look at that and you see that like this is kind of a silly thing to do and you let go of it, then just don't hang out with them. Because why would you? Me too. Yeah, it happens. Christian, this reminds me of arguing with my family. I was able to be more honestly, with them when I let go of suffering anger. Yeah, and this is the thing, Christian, just like you're saying, is that we can make a choice. If you would have a lot of anger, I've had lots of anger towards my parents, especially my father. As long as you hold on to that anger and you push with that, then you're not going to be able to make a conscious choice of what you want to do, because you'll be reacting towards it, you'll be pushing towards it, having a lot of distortion towards it. And then when you let go of that, and then you see, okay, wait a minute, maybe actually my dad has a point with that I shouldn't be out late at night when I'm 14 years old. That's kind of not safe. And they're just doing this because they want me to be okay. I might be able to see that, or I might not. Or it might be that he's just an asshole and he just acts like an idiot, which he did sometimes. But he was still a kind idiot. And he loved me, even though he wasn't able to show it in the way that I would have wanted it. But he just did his best. So when we let go of what we think they should do or what they have to do, and then we don't feel that anger, that hurt, that guilt, that whatever it is, fear, and then you make a choice. It's not that you should stay in a situation that is bad for you. Absolutely not. You should move away from that. But it's also not necessary always to do that, because just like Christian said, he was able to let go of the suffering or the anger and then interact with, because it is our family, and I mean it's nice. You're only going to have one family, you can't really get rid of them, so then it's nice to have a working relationship. It might mean that you can't interact the way you needed to. It might mean that you need to set boundaries and set limits, That's kind of what families are about. I can see my kids now. My daughter is 5.5 and my son is 2. They keep clashing the whole time. They need to learn to set limits. My daughter says, like, this is not okay. You can't pull my hair. You can't poke my eye. But you can jump on me and bite my butt, like bite my butt back a little bit, like, and have fun. That we can do. But it's difficult to know where the limits go. And it's easy that goes into anger. Kids generally have an easier time doing it than we do because they don't have so many things they're pushing and pulling against. So for them it's easier. They haven't created this strong sense of me yet that they need to protect. Unless they're like that kitten I talked about. It was in Malaysia, I think. Was it Kuala Lumpur? I think it was Kuala Lumpur. That kitten who had been kicked and hurt so much that he reacted towards everything. And that can happen to children as well. Jack Crasher. Hey Jack, nice to have you. How's that tea of yours? Any new tastes? That's just normal rooibos today, which is my favorite. Catherine, right. I let them go. Been 10 years. My life has improved greatly without them. Yeah, it's perfect, Catherine. And then, now that you have that, you can look at that hurt that you have, that feeling, and you can let go of that. What's going to happen is that we feel like, no, I can't do that, because then, like, who was it that said that before, that that it's Lyubov, because it feels like something terrible happens if you do that. But you're just letting go of this connection this identity you've created towards them. And then after that, maybe you forgive them, maybe they've changed, maybe you change how you see it. Or maybe you just continue like you're doing, which from the sound of it probably is the right thing to do. But you'll no longer be doing that with force, with pushing them away, with anger, with all this aversion towards it. You'll be doing it simply because you choose to do so. Tulibar, good night. Thanks for the night. Oh yes, it's late. Thank you for reminding me, Tulibar. It's nice having you here. Mindful Mama. Thank you for a nice evening. Good night. Yes, I'm gonna go to bed as well. I love talking about these things, and I love your questions when it's like this. It's just my favorite subject, and I really get happy when people ask questions that we can talk about like this, because I believe firmly that everyone can and should be happy and enjoy being alive. And I think that unfortunately we make it really difficult for ourselves to do that. Society makes it difficult. Unfortunately, many religions, or the way religions are practiced, make it difficult for us as well. So until next time, ask yourself, how are you feeling? How are you doing right now? And if it's not, I'm in a good mood, then ask yourself, why not? And see if that's a good use of your time. Thank you. And I'll see you again on Thursday.